So I don't think anyone should get to the point where they get so frustrated with women that they start encouraging behaviors that can cause them legal trouble. Again, you have to know where you are, what country you're in, before you recommend certain lifestyles, and you have to have a sort of practicality. What's practical? Okay? Because, again, and every country is different, and every woman from every country is different, and certain modes of behavior don't work in other countries because of the economic system there. For example, if you hold your women down, your nation will become weak, because if the man gets sick and he's unable to help, he has to have a surgery, you'll be out in the street homeless. For example, in America, if one of the partners gets ill and they don't get adequate coverage, unemployment, or something along that nature, they don't have adequate health insurance, a good job fails out, well, you're going to have a problem surviving. So if both people are contributing to keeping the household good, I think that that's more healthier and more balanced. You have to have a balance. And there's a difference between encouraging women to expand their culinary art skills, to learn how to cook. That's why I try to do a lot of cooking videos. I love cooking. But I don't expect for someone to say, like, you have to do this. I mean, I've cooked for people before and they didn't appreciate it. A lot of men expect it and then they don't appreciate it. And even if you cook something 5-star, they always find something to complain about. So, you can still cook for someone and they can still cheat on you. You can cook for someone and they can still beat you. You can cook for someone and they can still cause you psychological damage. So again, I don't think just the cooking and the cleaning aspect of it, because how many men, they really do abuse their wives, even though their wives are really good, or they cheat on them. So I think it's quite dangerous if you set up this dichotomy of, if you just cook for your man, obey everything he says, come like a dog whenever he calls you, and completely submit yourself to him, everything in your relationship will go fine. I've noticed time and time again, and Abigail Adams, John Adams' wife, kind of mentioned this too, that certain men really do become tyrants. The more power you give them, the more tyrannical they become. And in today's society, especially in America, I don't see how that type of thinking would lead to any type of happiness in the home. I really don't. I don't see how that would help somebody have a healthy relationship. I mean, you can learn to cook together. Couples can take a cooking class. They can, have some type of cute, Tuesday night stir fry with each other. If there's dishes in the sink, rotate who does it. If the garbage is full, anyone can take it out. One week, another person cleans the bathroom. The next week, another person cleans the bathroom. It doesn't have to be this sort of only you and never me because I simply make a little bit more money. I don't really see how that's effective, and I don't see how that's sustainable, because if both people are paying rent and both people have their own duties, both people are educated, I don't see how you can pass off the responsibilities just onto one person. Both people have to contribute to maintaining and sustaining not only the family, but the whole peace within the home. So if you're not really telling people how to do that, and it's simply just a matter of obey because this is written down, even if someone who is unfit to lead should lead because of their genitalia, I think this is really bizarre. I mean, I just think it's so bizarre. So maybe you guys can explain it further, but I just don't see how that's sustainable. I don't see how that leads to a happy home. And there's nothing wrong with taking turns, and it makes the burden lighter. It makes the woman feel less oppressed, right? Because you can cook for someone and you can love them and give them everything, make desserts, make fresh bread, make handmade tortillas, make tamales, do all kinds of things, and they'll still be a tyrant. So sometimes you shouldn't cook for people who don't deserve it, I'd argue. They don't deserve it. Let them eat at 7-Eleven. Let them eat at Burger King. Let them get sick. And maybe when they get sick, they'll appreciate what they used to have. Some people have to be deprived of something in order to appreciate it. And if you act like that isn't possible, that's part of the problem. And it's a little bit odd, I really gotta say. I mean, my grandma, she didn't go to school. She had her first kid at 14. And when my grandpa was laid off from his good job, we struggled, and she had no skills in order to get a job to help the family survive. If you're encouraging women to get an education, but then they have to stitch their mouth shut, and they marry somebody who maybe they don't really love them, they're together, it's kind of a dead relationship, but you're there for the kids, or you're there for because your parents like them. You're not as motivated inside to take care of that person because you're not in love, right? And let me tell you something, food tastes different when you cook it without love. It's dead in flavor. Soul food, we call it, comes from the heart. And when you really like somebody and you really want to do a good meal, it can be 5-star even if it only has 4 components of ingredients. But if you're not motivated to cook for the person and you scrape it together just to get it done, to get the dude fed so he can shut up, it's not going to have the same flavor. And your kids can see that. They can see the resentment. And to expect a woman to just always carry that resentment in her stomach is going to cause her some type of cancer. It's going to cause her some type of mental illness, depression, loneliness that can lead to suicide. If cooking was the only way to get happy in a relationship, then there would be no divorce. And I understand we have a problem with young ones not knowing how to cook. That is a big problem, which we all have to contribute to help. But more people, because of the lockdowns and they couldn't go out to eat, they started realizing how you make bread. There was some data that James Altucher, very smart man, a Jewish guy from New York, really like following his content, but he discussed this study where more people were Googling how to make certain recipes because they couldn't go out and get it themselves. So again, that's important, Now, when you talk about traditional relationships, the cowboy culture in America where the woman's on the homestead and the man's out rustling the cattle, chopping down the pine tree for wood and doing all this stuff, elk hunting and stuff. Yeah, that works for, if you're still in the rural area. But if both of you are living in an apartment or a house or a condo or whatever, I don't really see how that machismo lifestyle is going to 100% work. Again, that's why it's like the advice you give, you have to tailor it for certain contexts because, a woman stuck inside all day, her body will deteriorate, she'll get cellulite, she will not want to clean herself, she'll feel like she's in a prison with the white walls and just not very happy, very poor, maybe she doesn't love the guy, she feels stuck, all she does is washing dishes, doing laundry, not enough time for herself. She's not going to want to be very motivated to make you that great meal or to make her, beautify herself with your favorite nightgown, pajamas and stuff. So you really have to look at that. And some men don't deserve everything that you're asking. I mean, some men really are just there and they barely pay the rent. They're not very connective. They're not very talkative and they're not even that great in bed. And they want the world handed to them on a silver platter. And that's just not good for me. And I just keep noticing it. I've been abused by men my entire life, and most of them wanted you to submit, and they wouldn't let you leave, or they wouldn't let you go to the gym. They get jealous, or they want to take your phone away, or they want to be the ones to give you money to buy coffee, and you don't have your own money, and that keeps you stuck. It keeps you stuck in an unhealthy relationship, and that causes resentment, which leads to verbal arguments, which then leads to domestic violence. And as someone who's been beaten by men, you won't be able to submit a woman through beating. Now, if you're defending yourself from somebody who's high on crack or heroin, I understand. You got to smack her, get her off you. If she's abusing you, you got to get her off you. If she's scratching you and trying to, kill your cat or whatever, or stab your car tires or break your windshield, yes, you have to defend yourself. But again, you have to be very cautious with the advice you give to young men who can misconstrue what you're saying and then become abusive, because women today, we're getting tired of the abuse. We don't want to have to always shut up. We don't want to have to always obey. And not every man deserves a second wife, a third, a fourth. Not every man even deserves a wife, period. Some men deserve to be alone, to die alone, because of their negative behavior and their selfishness, their egocentric attitude, and, their inability to sustain the family, and it's not smart today for one person just to be working. And even if you shouldn't even have just one job, you should have multiple jobs, dynamic skills. You cannot just be a one-trick pony, right? And each has their place to sustain the household, and each family should do what works for them and their schedule, right? You think that the wife of Barack Obama is being his housemaid? She's got her own things to do, and they raise their children and they live together. Steve Jobs, when he was alive, he was a terrible father, but he was a millionaire, right? You got to look at it. I mean, look at the way Bill Gates dresses. The dude is a little bit weird, and he wears the same thing all the time. Kind of like, I don't know. I haven't bought new clothes in a long time, years I think. Got a couple, but I'm not really into fashion. But if you're raising men to worship fashion, right? And then you get mad when the women start to worship fashion and want luxury, well, you're producing the same thing, right? But if you also fanaticize and say you can't have anything nice, even if you can afford it, then the woman feels she's being denied, and then problems arise. So I mean, there's so many problems that come from situations that, you know, you really have to think, what does this mean? You know, we all want to be able to correct. Like, I'm pretty hard on certain women who encourage adult entertainment industries, because a lot of those women neglect their children, and then the streets and the phones raise their children, and then those children end up in the criminal justice system, and then they struggle to find jobs, and then they're back on the street, and the cycle continues. That's why I speak out against them, right? But that doesn't mean I don't think a woman should know how to take care of her man, both in the bedroom, in the kitchen, at work, or wherever else. There's a balance. So just think about, when you say things like, oh, you know, feminist this, feminist that, what are you really saying? Is it that you want, you know, an uneducated, illiterate slave maid? Or do you want a formidable, educated, mindful, self-sufficient, determined, fearless, nurturing guardian as your partner? Right? You know, the language is very important. And then knowing what kind of culture you're talking to, and then maybe, you know, examine anthropologically how different Muslims express themselves in different countries. Chinese Muslims, you have Thailand, you have Indonesia, Malaysia, right? America, the UK, you got Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Denmark, Norway. You have all types of countries, right? So advice that works in a country with a very low GDP, with very bad infrastructure, and not a lot of, you know, opportunities, there can be different advice for those women because they don't have the opportunity, so you struggle the best you can. But a woman who is making $60,000 or more a year, she has, you know, a master's degree, she has 2 cars, and, you know, maybe owns some land, you know, has a good stock portfolio, you're not gonna talk to her and treat her like trash and submit her the same way as somebody who decided to get married at 12 and has no potential future ahead of them. Now, I'm not trying to say that women who are educated are automatically better, but I'm saying that the requirements of a woman who has a dynamic brain are quite different than those who only want lust, such as, you know, a Cardi B type, a Cardi B wannabe. You know, they want glitz and glamour and a good rodeo. Okay, you know, you deal with it. That other women, maybe they want something more simple, but you don't know what you want till you get it, and then even when you get it, you may not want it anymore. So just think about that, and, you know, be careful. There's a lot of danger now for women. Yeah, it's, you know, men are becoming more feminine, you can say, but honestly, at this point, you know, as somebody who's dealt with a lot of strong men, I can see why women would want a more feminine men, because you can control them, and, you know, they will get abused less. And those men seem to be more connected with their emotions. They seem to be more conscious, aware. They seem to be more able to agree, compromise, to negotiate, right? If someone is very masculine, no matter how good looking they are, but they're bullheaded, they're just too edgy. When they talk, it feels like there's like a paper cut on your fingertips. I mean, some women want that, and good for them, right? But at a certain point, some women are going to get tired of the constant, you know, the goat who hits their kneecaps, right? You ever had a billy goat ram into your knee? That's, the billy goat, when he hits the other goats to keep walking, that's nice. But when you're standing there with your staff and then you don't put the staff in front of your knee so that he can't hit your knee and he gets you, well, it's a problem. So I just feel like don't start hating women just because they're feminists, right? Don't hate women just because they're feminists. I think that's wrong. I don't like feminists, many of them. Many of them I think are very crazy. I mean, especially the ones with shaved heads and hairy armpits and hairy legs and who don't wear bras and have a nose ring and wear all black with jack boots. Yeah, and maybe I won't always get along with them, but some of them can be very funny, have a sense of humor, and I'll still treat them with dignity and respect as long as they do what they have to do and I do what I have to do. You live and let live, right? For certain contexts. Now, if their bad behavior is bleeding over into my personal territory, to my personal life, well, then that would be a different matter. So I just think that you should examine a lot of that, everyone, all of us, because life is always changing. So that's what I gotta say.